Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of This Is Their Life. This video is for Michaela. I'm sorry if the camera, the angle of the camera, but
John's watching the water fountain.
oh,
Look at him.
yeah.
They're like guarding it.
Anyway, you were asking me about when I don't remember exactly how old I was, and did I not have a mother to care for me?
Not a good mother.
Well, let me go into some things. I am from Cadiz, España, or I still say some things in Spanish, okay? Cadiz, Spain. Yeah, I mean, even to this day, I say España. I have to think about saying Spain instead of España. We moved to the United States when I was 8 years old. My dad was in the Army, and he was stationed in Spain when I was born, and I was born a Spanish citizen. Well, I was born a dual citizen, but my birth was first registered with the Spanish authorities. Anyway, let's jump to 1972. We had lived on Okinawa for 5 years before moving to the United States. I was 8 years old. My parents divorced. I used to have a bunch of paperwork from different places I was in. Well, mainly from Devereaux.
Get out of there.
We moved to the United States in 1972, and that very year, my mother was kind enough to send me to Austin State Hospital.
She loved you.
Yeah, and I was there about a year. I'm not going to go into the abuse that occurred there, but let me tell you, it was bad.
At least I didn't have to go through that hell.
No. And
My mother wasn't much better than his.
and then I just don't remember the exact years some of these things took place, or exactly how long I was in some of these places, but
You don't really want to remember them either.
no. So I was in Austin State Hospital, or ASH, A-S-H, ASH, and I think all of the what would have been dormitory buildings are gone now. They have new buildings. The first building I was in, it was condemned. Yes, we lived in it even though it was a condemned building.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and
Was that the one that was the military base?
no. These were the old psych hospitals where you had bars and screens and stuff like that on the windows. The building I was in, there were 2 floors. The ground floor on one side was for the teenage girls. My side was for all the boys. And then up above the girls were the teenage boys, even though they had some teenage boys where I was. And above where I was were the mentally retarded kids.
Sounds like a confused mess.
Yeah. And I think the only building that may still exist is the administration building or something. It's like a historic building. So technically my address was Alief, Texas, which at the time was a small farming community. Sort of a mix of the suburbs and a farming community. And it's like the first thing my mother does when we moved to the United States is she takes me to the Houston Child Guidance Center or Houston Family Guidance Center or something like that.
I mean,
who knows?
I
know. I was 8 years old. And
8-year-olds aren't known for
yeah,
being on their best behavior 24 hours at 24/7.
and in the Alief Independent School District at the time, there was 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 1, 2, 3 elementary schools. By the time I left, or by the time I finished elementary school, there were 5 elementary schools. I went to all 5 of them. They built a new middle school the year I started middle school. I went to the new middle school, not the original middle school. And I went to Alief Hastings High School South, which was the original high school.
See the new one.
And they built a new one, Elsick, but I didn't go to that one, thankfully. And when I first lived in Alief, I mean, the gymnasium wasn't even a part of the high school. It was on the other side of town.
Wasn't even built.
Well, they had a gymnasium, but it was an old building. Anyway, so next place I was in, I want to try and get this in order. It was Bel Air General Hospital Psych Unit. I believe that was the year Elvis died. So I was there during the summer. And I posted today or yesterday, I had Led Zeppelin 4, the album, the LP. And I'm more of an old folky, but, you know, I like a lot of different music. And I remember, I met my best friend through the shrink, Dr. Pesikoff, who, last I looked, is still alive and still practicing in Houston.
Oh my.
And his name was Wesley Tibbett. Wes eventually hung himself in his parents' home. But Wes sort of followed me I went to one institution, and then he would go to that institution. I'd go to another institution, then he would go to that institution. And we met with Dr. Pesikoff. Then we both went to Bel Air General Hospital Psych Unit. And I was going to say about Led Zeppelin 4. I had that album. I played it once because, you know, it was like, you know, it was a big deal at the time. You know, it was a really popular album. And, you know, the intro to Stairway to Heaven is actually very long, or longer than what they would play on the radio. And all the kids are like, "That's not it, man. That's not it." I'm like, "Yes, it is, man. Just listen to it."
That was the song for the prom that I was supposed to go to with Robert when I was a sophomore.
Oh.
And he was a junior.
Oh.
My chicken little wouldn't. We get all the way to FIUE ballroom, and he wouldn't go in.
Oh gosh.
My mother almost killed him.
And also I had.
Bad as hell at him too.
I had.
I wouldn't talk to him for about 2 months.
I don't blame you.
I was ready to hit him.
But so I was there during the summer. Most of the kids there, Bel Air was sort of rich.
Tom was about ready to tear him apart.
I don't blame him. So a lot of the kids there, you know, it's like the parents who go on holidays to Europe, and they would send their kids to, because the kids were teenagers, they couldn't hire a babysitter, so they send their kids to Bel Air General Hospital Psych Unit.
They sent them to the nut house.
Yeah. And, you know, there was this one kid, he always managed to find a way to escape.
He was like Houdini. Huh?
Yeah, they even put him in restraints back in the isolation.
That's his nickname, Houdini.
Yeah, back in the isolation area. And he still got, you know, like the staff would leave his room, because eventually they had to have a staff member in the room with him, even though he was in restraints.
He must have been double jointed or something.
The staff member would get up to go to the bathroom, he was gone.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and this was an isolation area. You know, so it was secure.
How in the hell did he get out of it?
I don't know. I wish I knew, though.
Straight jacket or just regular?
Just restraints on his ankles and his wrist. And the only reason was...
I know how those things work, because they tie you. Were they the leather ones? Or
yeah. And eventually what they did, they put socks that would go all the way up his arm, because somehow he would manipulate things with his hand, and that way he couldn't do that, but he still got out. That's why they had to have a staff member in the room with him all the time. The only reason they did that to him was because he escaped. He wasn't harming anyone. He wasn't fighting or anything. It's because he escaped. They put him in an isolation cell, and he escaped. Don't ask me how he did that.
Unless the door's locked.
Even with it locked.
Well,
he escaped.
It's shut and locked from the outside. You can't get
He
it
did. He did. He managed to escape. So.
What did he do? Climb out the window?
Yeah. Somehow he managed to get out the window.
Yeah, I mean, but you couldn't unlock the door.
No. So from that place, I went to middle school, and yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, I would walk up to these kids that were twice my size, you know, kids that were, you know, in the next school year, they're going to be freshmen in high school. You know, and I'm in my first year of middle school.
They could have killed you.
Yeah, and I walked up to him and I just socked him one. I mean, I hit him hard. The reason I hit him hard was because I knew they could beat the you know what out of me.
You were trying to prove it.
Yeah, I was trying to prove one. I was trying to. There was a lot of sexual abuse in Austin, and it was starting to weigh on me. And I'm not going to let anybody hurt me anymore. I'm tough. I'm really a man, and so I would. That was one of the ways I dealt with it. And I socked him good, and I knocked him to the floor. And these guys are big, and these are probably some of the guys I knew in high school that I got along with for some reason. But anyway, so for doing that, I got sent to Edgemead, which was up in Mineral Wells. My wife and I actually, when we left Texas, we drove by there. It was actually, of all the places I was at, it was the best place. I actually have fond memories of it. Debbie and Frank LeBoon, who were our teachers, they're on Facebook, but they won't friend me for some reason. They won't respond to my messages. But that was a long time ago. We're talking the 1970s here. They were going to take me to see John Denver. I was a big John Denver fan, still am. They were going to take. They had levels in these places. Austin didn't, I don't think, but most of the places had levels. And you would go like in Edgemead, it was level 1 was the best, level 5 was the worst. I made level 2 for 1 week. If I would have made level 2 for one more week, I would have got to have gone to see John Denver in Dallas Fort Worth. Actually, I'm skipping a place. I was in Houston International Hospital, HIH. When I got kicked out of middle school, permanently kicked out after just a few weeks, I got sent to H for fighting.
You were just a fighting thing, weren't you?
Yeah. And you ask my wife, I don't do anything like that anymore. I'm like, I don't want to fight. I'm like, peace and love. And
well, and I'm the opposite. I blame it because I was born under the sign of the ram in the cusp of a bull.
Yeah.
And what do you get when you put a ram and a bull together?
Yeah.
Nothing but trouble.
So I got sent to HIH, Houston International Hospital. They had different floors. The place is closed. Building's still there. I don't know what it is now. I was on the adolescent unit. There was a guy who worked there who looked like Jimmy Page.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's different.
And there was this lady who worked there, Debbie Steino. She had worked in Bel Air, so I knew her in Bel Air. I'm down in the dining hall because the dining hall was on the ground floor. Well, I still say things European style, ground floor. Americans say first floor. To me, a first floor is what you call a second floor. But anyway, I'm in the dining hall. I'm eating, and I'm like, I look up, and there's Debbie. I'm like, Debbie. I run over to her, give her a big hug. She had one of her legs in a cast.
Oh boy.
She was going to take me to see a Queen concert. But what do they call the nurse?
Director of DON?
No, not the DON.
RN?
No, it's like the charge nurse. The charge nurse said, no way, you're not taking him to see Queen. The drugs, back in the 70s, people smoked pot openly in concerts and stuff. Hey, it was the 70s. Well, Debbie smoked pot. She took me out on pass. What did we do? We went to see Jaws. Okay, it was like Jaws played in. This was back in the days when movie theaters showed one movie. So
you were lucky.
Yeah, so we saw Jaws. We went back to her house. What did we do when we went back to her house? She pulls this cookie tin down. She rolls a joint. We get high. And then, I don't know, we smoked one or two, first time ever, man. And every time you went back from pass at HIH, you had a UA.
Oh boy.
She worked on the PDAP unit, Palmer Drug Abuse Program. She worked on the PDAP unit. And I go back. Now, there were two things. I was one of the people that only had a UA done. There was another group of people that actually had a full body cavity search done, but thankfully that wasn't me. Well, what do you think happened? My UA came back positive. So my shrink there, oh, you're a drug addict. I smoked like one freaking joint. And I don't remember it actually having any effect on me. So I get sent to Edgemead up in Mineral Wells. I was there about a year. That was like the second time in 40 years in Texas I saw it snow. That was pretty good. No, Edgemead, I mean, it had its ups and downs. Yeah, I think most shrinks need a shrink.
Ooh, 23 to 27 tomorrow. Ooh, heat wave.
The
weather forecast.
So I get sent to Edgemead. I'm there about a year. I go home. I go to high school.
Ooh, 51 on Saturday, honey.
And I don't remember what I did that first year of high school, but I got sent to Devereaux. I was there a year, give or take. I was there a year. Now let me say, my dad never supported me being in any of these places. But my mother had custody. My dad was in the Army. My dad wasn't in a position to. My dad was one of those people. I mean, there are these people. The military's their life. It's not just that it's their life. They need that, whatever it is that the military gives them. And my dad was one of those guys. At that point, my dad was actually a warrant officer, not a major anymore. I mean, he had been a major, but he resigned his commission, so he got busted down.
Sucks.
Yeah. And for a while, he was in Florida. He was at where the space shuttle was, where they would launch the space shuttle. One of my cousins, because my dad was Canadian. I mean, he was from Canada, born and raised. And in World War II, he served in the Canadian Merchant Navy. My grandfather served in the Canadian Navy. My grandfather was first engineer, but I'm getting off into all sorts of other stuff. Yeah, it's nice to be able to not deal with the... So I go home. I go back to high school. And let's just say it didn't turn out too well. And they called the police on... Oh, it wasn't the police. It was the sheriff's department because we lived in the county. We didn't live in the city. Thankfully. Houston Police Department was bad. Very bad. In the 4th Ward, they were known to just pull out their guns and just have target practice on people. And that was in the 70s. Anyway, so...
Sounds like St. Louis sometimes.
So... it was basically, I was told that I either had a choice of being tried as an adult and going back to Devereaux. I did, excuse me, I didn't choose to go back to Devereaux, but that's the choice that was made for me because I was underage.
I don't know what she's doing next door.
Oh, who knows? Our neighbor next door is loud and, yeah. So I get sent back to Devereaux. I'm there over 2 years. I turn 18 while I'm there. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. I mean, I made a video about one of the staff. He was messing around with another man's wife. Somehow he found out, or she told him, and that old boy comes down to the dorm with a gun in his hand, looking for the staff member. Oh, geez, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, so that old boy took off. He took off running scared.
Well, I wonder why.
Yeah, and Ron Gant from the Atlanta Braves. His mother was our house mother when I was in Barclay Hall. I was in 2 different dorms. See, Wesley, I was in Houston International, after I left Houston International Hospital, Wesley wound up there. After I left Edgemead, Wesley wound up there. I'm in Devereaux. Wesley winds up there. Wesley's there for a week. He's in Anderson Division. Anderson Division were tough kids. They were street smart. They were streetwise. They were tough kids. I didn't F with those kids. And they kicked Wesley out after a week. That is saying something. And then a couple of years later, he kills himself. And he was my best friend for years, man. I miss the old boy. But anyway, I was in Barclay Hall, and then later I was in Parkdale Lodge, and I'm just not going to go into a lot of that stuff. But I turned 18. They couldn't hold me anymore, and they legally couldn't keep me. And thing is, my mother, it turns out, didn't even want me. And I contacted an attorney through the attorney referral service, which was difficult to do because they didn't want me to do that. And anyway, this attorney, I wish I knew her name, because if it weren't for her, I wouldn't have gotten out of there. Although I could have left. I did once. I went AWOL once. They called it AWOL. When I was in Edgemead, they called it rabbit fever. Different places, different names. You know. I mean, it was the nickname we had in Edgemead was rabbit fever. It was an old army base up in Mineral Wells. And anyway, Devereaux is south of Victoria, Texas. It's still there, but they use it for a different purpose now. Different kinds of people there. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dorms, but only 7 of them were used. One was used for like new staff before they could get an apartment or a house in Victoria. You know, they could stay in that dorm for a few months. And so there were 2 girl dorms, 1, 2, 3, 4 boy dorms. And you know, when I did get home, my mother said, I don't want you here. So
That's lovely.
yeah. So you know, I mean, if you have questions, I'll answer your questions. But
where were you supposed to go?
Yeah, you know, and I tell you, I didn't trust anybody. What was I supposed to do? You know, there was Covenant House, which I didn't know about. But even if I would have known about it, I didn't trust anybody. I wasn't gonna call the 9 line, which is no longer in service, from my understanding. Yeah, and you know, but you know, Covenant House only takes you up to like 17 or 18. What was I gonna do? Where was I gonna go?
You didn't give a damn.
You know, and you know, I mean, when I was in Devereaux, if I would have known about Covenant House, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have, because I didn't trust anybody. You were the only reason you wanted anything to do with me was so you could beat me, so you could fuck me, or so you could make money off me somehow. That was the only thing people wanted me for. That's what I thought. That's what I felt. So where was I gonna go? Go have somebody else fuck me or beat me? I mean, that's what life was. So hopefully you know my story.